buying 101, the process of becoming a home buyer. So first of all, I guess we need to introduce ourselves. So I'll start. I am Shakika Miller McIntyre, broker owner of Carod Properties and realtor. And you are?
Patricia Johnson, broker, realtor with Carod Properties.
Sharice Lloyd, realtor broker with Carod Properties.
And Latricia Gilmore, broker, realtor, Carod Properties.
Awesome. And we have several beautiful women that are not here with us today that are also incredible realtors.
Yes.
We actually have one behind the camera. You cannot see her. MJ, would you like to say hello?
Hi, how's everyone doing today? I'm technical assistance today.
Awesome. Well, we're going to jump right into the home buying process. All of us have been realtors for quite some time now and have some in-depth experience on the buying process, also from our own personal experience. And so why don't we just share our home buying experience? I think that'd be a great start so that we can really talk more to our buyers about that process. So what was your home buying process?
The first one didn't have a lot of knowledge at all. We did have a realtor, but going into the process, all we knew was that we were getting married and we wanted a house. That's all I knew. Didn't even know really where to start. So luckily we went to a model home. And no, I back up. That was my second go around. I'm sorry. So this lady I used to work with referred a realtor to us. We met up with her, and she just kind of took us on, and she led us from A to Z. I mean, we felt so comfortable with her. She explained what was happening. She put us in contact with the lender. Everything that we tell our clients to do, she did just that for us. So she made it so smooth for us. And second go around, we hired a different realtor. Same process. Every time that we purchased a home, it has been great. And fortunately, the third go around, I was able to be the agent for our investment property.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So it's been exciting.
How about you, Sharice?
My first time buying a house, we had been in Charlotte for a year. We knew that, and we had already started talking about it actually. So we had already started talking about it. So a year before we actually purchased the house, we knew we wanted to purchase. So we started preparing ourselves for it actually. We didn't have a realtor. And the reason at that time we didn't have a realtor, this was over 20 years ago, the reason why we didn't have a realtor is because of some of the horror stories that we heard. Yes, yes. You know, people hear it unfortunately, right? So some of it was the horror stories that we saw. I was afraid to actually do it, so I started kind of looking at my own and going out on my own. I found Portrait Homes, actually, at the time, Portrait Homes, and his name was Leaf. You ever met Leaf? Leaf was wonderful, and he was an on-site agent, and I honestly thought he was working for us. That's a myth, but I honestly thought he was working for us, but he still did a great job. But with that, I because I wanted to kind of like be sure that we were getting what we were supposed to get, I was doing a lot of research on my own, and I'm okay. It wasn't a bad experience at all. We got to look at the house being built. We saw it being built from ground on up. We went through the inspections, everything like that. So it really wasn't a bad experience. But in my process, I actually talked to other people who had some bad experiences. And that's kind of what led me to want to do my own thing as well, as far as real estate goes.
Okay. Patricia?
I'm actually not a homeowner yet, but I am on a 12-month plan to buy hopefully my first investment property, since I have new air property that we're moving into. But yeah, so I'm excited.
Awesome, awesome. And for me, my home buying process actually was an invitation from someone that I work with. Love her still today. She actually invited me to a NACA home buying workshop, and we'll talk one day soon, I'm sure, about NACA and all the other great programs out there for first-time home buyers. But I went through the workshop in August, had a great experience, had a great counselor, was introduced to a tremendous realtor, Mr. L. Nathan Davis, who is still in the business today.
Yes.
And within 4 months, right after Christmas, I was in my new home, had closed. But it was just an awesome process for me, and I think looking back, because I was so young, I wasn't nervous or scared about the process. I was a little timid, but I wasn't really nervous. I didn't have any I guess I didn't have enough foresight or anybody else that had been through the process to taint my thought process. So even though going into it was a little different, I just didn't have, there was no fear there for me going in. And they were great. The information they gave me was wonderful. The counselors, even though they got on my nerves asking for documentation, that was a bothersome process. But once I understood the why behind it, and then being introduced to the realtor, which was L. Nathan Davis, we saw 2 houses. I fell in love with the second house, and it was smooth from there. And it's funny because I just actually saw the seller of that house in a workshop. He's now a licensed broker, which is really odd. But he was in a class, and we both kind of remembered the process that we had gone through. So for my first home buying process, it was, like you said, Sharice, it was easy. And so I do think, what do you guys think about when you're talking to home buyers and they have those stories? Do you think, because of your own experience, because it sounds like we all had good experiences, is it easier to relate to individuals that maybe have some doubts in that first process or getting started? Or do you find yourself thinking things like, just do it, just do it?
We've seen the good and bad, so it's easy to relate to the process that's not going smooth.
Right.
Because we may not have experienced it as we were purchasing our home, but with our other clients. Some transactions just wasn't as smooth as others.
Okay.
I think for me, it's kind of easy to relate. I think that for one, the type of person that I am, because your character has a lot to do with how you deal with people as well. So I think the type of person I am, I tend to empathize a lot with my clients. So I sort of walk in their steps, so to speak. Also, because we've done it for so long, and because most of us have been in the business for as long, it's like we can already anticipate what the questions are going to be or what's going to happen. So we kind of know what to expect as far as that goes. I actually, I worked on the new home construction side of it. So with me working on the new home construction side of it, with me having that type of experience, then I kind of know what goes into all of the anxiety that a first-time home buyer might feel when their house is being built. And not even just a first-time home buyer, because that anxiety is there even when you're building your second, third house or whatever. So that anxiety part. So I think that it's up to us to kind of reassure our clients and to let them know, okay, this is not our first rodeo, and we understand that you might have that buyer's remorse. Have you dealt with clients that have had buyer's remorse and stuff, right? And so we have to deal with that buyer's remorse with that client, and we kind of have to deal with them getting anxious and nervous and even getting upset because the closing didn't happen on the day that they thought it was going to happen. So those types of things, but that's part of it.
So Patricia, with you having not gone through the buying process as of now, do you think you're more in tune with the person that hasn't gone through it? Because it's kind of like you're both learning the ropes, and she's our newest broker. And so do you think it's easier to connect with clients because you're kind of on the same path? Now you're on the same path.
It is, but I've had so many years in customer service. So if I don't know the answer, then I know who to go to, and my BIC is always available for me. But it is easier to kind of walk them through the process a lot of times, especially with the first, second transaction. It's brand new. So we both going through emotions together. If something comes up, then we're both like, and I'm like, let me get an answer, and I'll get right back to you. But it has been pleasurable. Being in customer service is always about putting the customer first or putting the client first. So I always try to say, just breathe. Just concentrate, it's going to be okay, and try to do everything I can to make them happy, and let's get through this transaction. So, the good thing is just being able to motivate. And as long as they're motivated and they stay motivated, then that'll keep them, coming along, especially through that inspection process and appraisals.
So let's talk about that process. For me, when I am being introduced. So if someone picks up the phone and says, Shakika, I would like to buy a house. My first step is talking to them about, one, why do they want to purchase a house? What their expectations is about buying a property. So, and that's great because then you kind of figure out, do they think this is going to be smooth selling? Do they think it's bumps in the road? Do they think they need a lot of money? Do they think, they're just going to buy tomorrow? What is their expectation in this process? And so it makes it a lot easier for me to have a conversation with them. So from that point, what do you do, Latricia? So after you have that conversation and they have their expectations set, you've talked to them about who you are, what role you play in that. What's your next step for your client? So where do they go from there?
I do like to make sure that their expectations are reality, because some people come into the game with a whole different mindset of what the true process looks like. So I want to make sure that is clear so that no one can say I misled them through the process.
Right.
And so once I get an idea of what they're looking for, and once they've obtained their pre-qualification, I just send out a few properties, like test properties. Like I may send out 10. If you don't like any of those 10, and I've pulled exactly what you've asked for, we may need to regroup and talk about it again. So I'm here to try to find exactly what it is you're looking for, but I expect reality with my clients.
Okay. So from what I'm hearing is we're setting an expectation, making sure everybody's on the same page is number one. The number two, you said pre-qualification. And so that's what I do. So it's instant. Before I have anything or do anything, we go out. Before I even send the first 10, they have to have a pre-qual with me, a pre-qualification with me. And that's about the expectation, because we don't want them looking for something. Sharice, talk to us about the pre-qualification. What does that look like for a client, and why is that so important to have a pre-qualification in place before moving forward?
The pre-qualification part of it it's important because you need to know as a realtor, what it is that the client actually is able to afford or can afford. And as a client, they need to know this because they need to have an idea of what the expectations are as far as the finances go. We have clients that may come in and they're looking at what they have right now, or the fact that they're renting right now. The fact that they're renting right now, they may be able to afford a $1,200 monthly payment. However, looking at possibly going to a loan officer, the loan officer might pull some things that doesn't look like they really can afford, because they could be at a point where even though they're paying the $1,200 a month in rent, at the same time there are other things that come along with the house as well that a person needs to kind of think about. So it puts everything in real-time perspective for them. So it gives everybody a perspective as to what it is that I'm so sorry. It gives everybody an idea of what to exactly expect with their finances. So for me, I do want a pre-qual in place before I actually put you in my car and before I actually start sending you things, because I don't want your time to be wasted. I don't want for your expectations to be higher than what it should be, because it's hard to bring a person back down to reality. If I go by what you say you want, and I go by what you say you can afford, and that's it, but I haven't actually gone out and done my due diligence, making sure that you are where you say you can be, and I'm sending you, property that you really can't afford, then now you're discouraged.
Correct.
And we wasted a lot of time. And so I don't want to do that to my person. And I just think that it's important for us to get that pre-qual in and whatnot. So it's about going to that loan officer, giving them your finances. You're talking to them about your pay, your expenses. They're pulling your credit. Once they pull your credit, they are now doing the numbers just to make sure that you are where you can be.
Patricia, have you had someone that has said to you maybe they don't want to call a lender because they've gotten something in the mail and they said, oh, well, I've been pre-approved for, let's say, $150,000, and now they don't want to take that next step to actually call someone and sit down and do paperwork. They want to go look before that. Have you had someone that maybe had a pre-approval that you were trying to convince to actually go get a pre-qualification?
No.
I'm sure you were going to say yes.
Not yet. Hopefully I don't have to go.
It's going to happen.
Well, let's MJ is behind the scenes, so I'm going to ask MJ because you can still hear her. I know she may not pop up on the screen, but MJ, can you give us some insight in regards to pre-approval versus pre-qualification? Oh, she's going to walk around. She's going to
walk
race
around.
us with her
I'm
presence.
going to make my presence known. So one of the important things I always share with clients is that you have to disclose all of your information, because if you do not disclose at the time of application, it absolutely can come out during the underwriting process. And so I tell clients, be prepared to disclose your bank statements, your tax records, your pay stubs, give all information about your employment. A lot of people, there's a lot of industries now that are going to people working as contractors. And I've had this issue come up in the last few months where they're working as contractors, they make a great salary, but when they go to purchase a home, some lenders treat contracting as part-time employment.
Right.
This is just an example. And so if you don't tell your lender, yes, I work for Bank of America, but I'm a contractor, that could really affect the lending process. And so the difference between the pre-qualification and the pre-approval is that with pre-qualification, the lender is just literally taking the information you're verbally giving them and seeing how much you can purchase and basically determining your purchase power. The pre-approval, the difference is you've actually given the lender some of your financial documentation, and they've approved those documents. Now they may ask for something later, like they may ask for verification of a savings account or a 401k, and then of course the property has its own process. But I always recommend get pre-qualified to see if you can start the process, get pre-approved before we actually start looking, because as soon as you find a home, we have to write an offer that you love. You have to write an offer, and it will make the due diligence process and the offer go much more smoothly if you actually have a pre-approval. So I'll add that tidbit, and I'm going back to be technical assistant.
Cool deal, cool deal. So thank you, MJ, for popping in on that question. So right now we have gone from setting expectations to getting a pre-qualification. So again, as MJ stated, that's just bare information that you've given to a lender, and maybe sometimes not. Maybe it's someone that's pulled your information, bare information, and giving you a pre-qual, like something in the mail, a flyer in the mail. And then we've gone over now to actually taking that pre-qualification a step further to actually getting a pre-approval to make sure that when you're ready to actually put in an offer on a home, there's no surprises. So for those that can kind of see that, it's like walking into a bank and saying, hi, I want to buy a house, and they say, hey Johnny, you can certainly buy a house, your credit's great, your income looks fine, and then that pre-qual is giving taxes that support what you said that you make, or going down your credit to make sure your debt to income ratio is in line. So now that we have this pre-approval in hand, so buyer Johnny and Jill and little Susan and Tom are ready now to purchase a property, and they have the pre-approval in hand. What's next? So Patricia, when someone comes to you and now they have their pre-approval, you're ready to go, what happens next?
I sit down with them, have a conversation, find out what type of house they're looking for, what area they want to be in, and I also get a contract signed. So
I was waiting on that.
I'm actually getting hired to work.
I was waiting on that buyer agency agreement.
Yes.
And then I'll just throw out the working with real estate agents document that if you're in North Carolina, we all should be giving that at substantial contact.
Yes.
And I know that all of us do that. We just didn't plug that in the process. So for me, it's on my email. That's the first thing they see if they scroll down my email, that they see that information. I'm sure everybody else has their way of communicating that. So, good point there.
I was going to ask you, what is it exactly? What do you tell your clients? Because a lot of people sometimes they don't like to kind of like start signing things and whatnot. But of course, there are certain things we have to have signed over. So how do you bring that up?
For me, again, I do it at first substantial contact because I have been in the business for quite some time. I'm saying this, and I don't want to take it the wrong way, but I make sure that my client is serious. By the time I'm sitting down with them to be hired, they are serious. So they're not in the I'm gonna have Shakika take me out to look at a few houses, and we're gonna look at 20 houses, and I'm gonna decide if I want to work with her.
Right.
I have my customers make a decision on whether or not they want to work with me. Again, at that first substantial meeting. So if we're talking on the phone, which of course with technology today, we can talk on the phone, we can do video conferences, we can meet in the office. But at that time I tell them, if you want to work with me, this is how I work, this is my process, this is my procedures. I set the expectation on how the process should go. And if they decide to work with me, here is my buyer agency agreement. And we go over that agreement. It talks about how long we'll work together. It talks about how I get paid. It talks about, you know, what your responsibility, what the buyer's responsibility is to me, what my responsibility is to them. Our contracts go a little bit further, and everybody uses different things, but I add in a few things that set up what I'm supposed to be doing for you. Am I finding your lender? I can refer you to a lender, but you ultimately use the lender that you like. Am I scheduling your home inspection? Am I the one making contact with the attorney's office? So our packet is pretty in-depth, and I think all of us pretty much use the same packet. But for me, it's really about building a relationship, if we don't already have that, and letting them know that if they want to work with me, then I'm here, I'm a resource. I'm here to support their dream of becoming a homeowner or an investor or whoever they are at that time. But I do not move forward with customers that are not ready to be my client. And again, that is because I've learned a lot, and we'll probably have a podcast about, you know, best realtor broker tips and practices and all of those things. But that is something that I've done for myself for years. And so if they choose to hire me, great. If not, they have the information, and they can go and interview several other people, and I'm, you know, totally comfortable.
And then they'll still come back to you.
And they do, and many do, but in the event that they don't, my goal is to have given them enough information so that if they're doing an apples to apples search with people they want to work with, then they have that opportunity to do that. But thank you, Patricia, for adding that in there, because that is important. So where are we now? So we have set the expectations. They've gotten a pre-approval a pre-qualification, hopefully up to a pre-approval. In the midst of that, we've done our paperwork, and now we're ready to go out. And Latricia kind of hit on that about the process of sending them things. So you have this pre-approval, you have their expectations. What's that process? So once they start looking, what does that look like?
When I send out the email, I tell them, look through the pictures, look through the description, look at the area, all of that. If it's one that just does not catch your attention, eliminate it. We're not going to look at it if it's okay. If it's okay, what's the point of looking at it?
Well, why not? Why we can't go look at the okay properties?
Because we're on a mission here. We're on a mission. We're not just out looking at homes just to be looking at them. We're looking at them to find what it is that you really want. Now, if you're looking for a four bedroom, and you have to have a 4-bedroom, we really don't need to be looking at 3 bedrooms.
We can't look at a 2-bedroom with a loft.
No, we're not looking at that, because that's not what you told me. I mean, if you want to reevaluate our search, we can do that, but I'm pulling what you told me you want to look at.
Okay.
So let's kind of stay focused there. Now, down the line, if you feel, okay, we can make 3 bedrooms work, we'll readjust it, but we're not going to just look at homes to be looking at it, or because, oh, the pictures are pretty, I want to see it inside of the house. No, we're not doing that.
How many homes are we going to look at?
How many homes are we going to look at?
Now, I can't say I have a standard number, but we're not going to look at every house in Charlotte and Harrisburg and all the surrounding areas. I mean,
but why?
You're going to like something from every house.
Right.
And you're going to get confused on what you really want, and nothing's going to be good enough. If you look at too many houses, you're going to start getting confused. So pick out the ones that you really, really, really like and you really want to see, taking into consideration all of those things, such as your location. Do you want to be near your job, near daycare, near shopping, whatever. So don't look at something in the country if you are a city, you have that city mentality. So it's just about figuring out what you want. We're going to look, and we're going to look at enough so that you can say you had options, but just know we're not going to spend a year looking at houses. Not with me.
And again, that is a best practice, and everybody works a little bit different. But I feel like as seasoned, veteran, professional realtor brokers, each of us anyway, has learned enough about the process, the buying process, and works both for your client and for yourself. Because like you were saying, you don't want someone to be in a situation where it's overwhelming. And for me, when I show clients, the likelihood that you're going to see 10 houses in a day is probably not likely. Because after 7, they all look alike, and you forgot what the first one looks like. My goal is to do maybe 5. 7's good, but 5 is really good, especially if they're similar. If you're open to a townhouse, if we see a house, a townhouse, a ranch, a 2-story, they're different. But if you go and pick 5 houses that look exactly well, not exactly alike, but are very similar, it does become a little bit overwhelming because then you don't remember anything, and now you're frustrated because you can't make a decision. So right now in the home buying process, again, we've set it up. We've set the expectations on how to move forward. We've gotten the client a pre-qualification. We've gone into the pre-approval. They've hired you in this process, and they're now your client. And you've heard us talk about customer versus client. So a customer is someone that you have not built the agency agreement with. They transfer to becoming your client, which means exclusive representation, by the way, for people listening and watching. Once you sign with the realtor, that is your person. That is your, you have hired them. You have partnered with them in this process. And so we always want to make sure that they understand that, so that they don't have a realtor here in Charlotte, one in New York that's helping them look, one in South Carolina, and we're all looking in Charlotte. Now you can have a realtor in those different states if you're going to move to those different states, but if it's in the the same location, you only need to be working with one person. And so now we're at the process where you're actually sending them information as a realtor. You're sending them information, you're giving them feedback, and potentially showing. And so now that we've gotten to this point, we're going to take a quick break, kind of regroup with ourselves. Actually, not regroup. We're going to take a potty break and do all that good stuff. And then come back, and we're going to go into from really picking that perfect fit all the way to the closing.
Yes.
So be back shortly in part 2.